Hi, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to the Hispanic Law Student Association's Fireside Chat with the incredible Irma Herrera. Kicking off what promises to be an inspiring and meaningful Affinity Alumni Reunion weekend. My name is Eva Moreno, and I've had the honor of serving as president of HALSA for this academic year. Tonight, we're gathered not just as students and alumni, but as a community bound by shared experiences, cultural pride, and a commitment to paving the way for those who come after us. This weekend is about celebrating our journeys, strengthening our connections, and honoring the trailblazers who have paved the way. Before we dive into our conversation, I want to take a moment to express our deepest gratitude to the sponsors who have made this evening possible. Chapman and Cutler, Plews, Shadley, Ratcher and Brown, Fragman, Shell and Wilmer, Rhodes McGee, Ropes and Gray, and Jackson Walker. Their generous support allows us to continue fostering spaces where our voices are amplified, our stories are celebrated, and our impact is felt beyond these walls. Thank you for investing in this community and believing in our collective success. And a special thank you to our HALSA board, faculty, and staff, without whom this event would not have been possible. Now, as we prepare for our discussion with Irma Herrera, I would like for all of us to enjoy this meal together. Feel free to share some stories, connect with old friends, and make some new ones. And we will be back after lunch to have an enriching performance by Irma Herrera and a fireside side chat. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry to interrupt your meal, but I just wanted to extend a warm welcome and say it is such a privilege to welcome you all to this special afternoon as we continue our celebration of community, culture, and connection. Today, we are honored to have with us an extraordinary individual whose career in storytelling has left a profound impact on the legal field, the arts, and the broader fight for social justice. Irma Herrera is a proud graduate of Notre Dame Law School, class of 1978, and a lifelong advocate for civil rights. She began her legal career representing farm workers in Washington State's Yakima Valley before moving on to the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, where she championed educational equity. She's also worked as a litigation associate at a corporate law firm in San Francisco. She later served as executive director of the Equal Rights Advocates, leading efforts to advance the rights of women and girls. Beyond the law, Irma has made her mark as a journalist, and her work appearing in the New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Lawyer, and Miss Magazine, tackling issues of race, gender, and class. In the past decade, Irma has taken her advocacy to the stage as a playwright and solo performer. Her critically acclaimed one-woman show, Why Would I Pronounce My Own Name?, blends personal narrative, humor, and American history to explore themes of identity and belonging. This show has captivated audiences across the country, from theaters to universities, prompting vital conversations about race, ethnicity, and what it means to be seen and heard. She has received the highest honor given by the American Bar Association Commission of Women in the Profession, the Margaret Brent Women Lawyers of Distinction Award. Today, before we begin our fireside chat, Irma will treat us to a special performance from her play. We are so grateful to have her with us today, not just for sharing her insights, but her art, her voice, and her powerful storytelling. After her performance, we will transition into a conversation moderated by our Director of Programming, Madeline Filak, who will help guide our discussion as we delve deeper into Irma's journey, her experiences, and the lessons she has learned along the way. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Irma Herrera.
First day of law school, criminal law class. There's 75 people in this room. My section, mostly white guys. A handful of minority students, 12 to 15 white women. I wait apprehensively as the professor calls roll. Greg Desjardins. Hello, Professor. It's Desjardins. Desjardins. Thank you, Mr. Desjardins. I grew up in a French-Canadian family. There, our name was Dutil. Here, I'm a Dutile. The professor called a few more names and then, Irma Herrera. Hello, Professor. It's pronounced Irma Herrera. In Spanish, the H is silent. All eyes on me, then on him. Irma Herrera. Thank you, Miss Herrera. Made a note of it. I started law school the year after Alan Bakke was denied admission to UC Davis Medical School. He sued the University of California, alleging that affirmative action programs violated the Constitution. Now, I didn't come to Notre Dame right out of college. I worked for several years. And when I was considering the possibility of a career in law, I called the one Chicano I knew who was in law school. Ernesto happened to be here at the University of Notre Dame. I knew him from college in San Antonio. He told me Notre Dame was a great school, actively recruiting minority students. I applied, got accepted, and a few months later, sight unseen, I moved to South Bend, Indiana. The conversation, the heated discussions, and misinformation you hear today about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that was the soundtrack of our lives as Notre Dame law students. We knew that some of our classmates resented our presence and viewed us as academically inferior. At least Black and brown students knew that. What about Asians? We had one Asian classmate, a lovely middle-aged woman, Dr. Tri Lee. No one doubted her credentials. She had been educated in France and at The Hague, and she had a doctorate from the University of Chicago. And she had already been a law professor and a dean in Hue, Vietnam, a city that was carpet bombed by the United States during the Vietnam War in the Tet Offensive. Now, I was proud of my being an affirmative action student. I didn't shy away from that. I defended our right to be on campus. I did so with conversations with classmates, responding to newspaper articles in the Daily Rag of Notre Dame. I even penned an op-ed piece about affirmative action. The Bakke case was argued during our third year in law school. It wasn't decided until after we had left. Irrespective of the differences students had around the issue of affirmative action, we were civil to each other, and it was a friendly and cohesive group of people. But sometimes people's attitudes came out in the strangest of ways. I'm having coffee with Jeffrey after federal income tax class. I don't know about where the coffee shop in the law school is, but in our day, in that building over there, it was in the lower level of the law school, and it was run by the law wives. My classmates will remember that. So I'm having coffee with Jeffrey. That day, Dean Link had grilled me on federal income tax class about business expenses and deductions. Great job in class, Irma. You were really prepared. You'd read everything. Has anyone ever told you you're a credit to your people? Jeffrey, has anyone ever told you you're a debit to you? And that's it. Come on up, Natalie. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. The part where I talk about affirmative action here at Notre Dame, that's not in my play. And also in my play, I have to give a description of the campus because I'm performing to people around the country. So I have to pay the University of Notre Dame money each year to use properly licensed photos that show the campus in all its splendor. And the biggest laugh is when I show the picture of Touchdown Jesus as viewed from the stadium. Anyway, I'm ready to chat with you, Natalie. so that I won't forget anything I want to say. Hi, everybody. Is that on? No. Do we need a microphone?
Yes.
Please speak in the microphone.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Irma. So thank you so much for being here and for showing us a little bit of your play. I just wanted to start off by asking you, what events in your life inspired you to pursue a career in the law, focusing especially in civil rights?
I think what inspired me most was the African American civil rights movement and seeing the power of lawyers to work with communities to advance change. So when I would see things in the news, not that I was a big news watcher as a little kid, but we were aware of things going on in Birmingham about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., about segregated schools. And I just needed to look around my own community and say, wow, we go to segregated schools. We live in segregated neighborhoods. We're poor compared to the white part of town. And I saw the power of lawyers to be spokespersons and advocates with along communities. And that's really what inspired me to go to law school.
And can you share some of the biggest challenges you have faced as a Latina in the legal profession?
I think the biggest challenge is not believing stories they tell us about us. I think that a lot of people of color and Latinos, African Americans, we are viewed as less capable and competent than other people. And very often we believe those stories. And I can tell you that when I moved to California and I was working with the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund, I was at the 501 Club. Sometimes on Fridays we'd get together and have a glass of wine, and we called ourselves the 501 Club. We would meet, and there was the wife of one of the lawyers, and she said, oh, you've just moved to California. Have you taken the California bar? And I said, no, not yet. I'm going to take it in February. And she said, well, you should be prepared to fail it more than once because Latinos don't pass the bar on the first try. And I thought, wow, nobody tells white people that, but I have heard many conversations where Latinos and African Americans are told, don't expect to pass the bar the first time. So I do think that there are a lot of misconceptions about our abilities and talents that people have. And so part of our job has been to seek to dispel them. And I think the other thing that has been difficult is we want to be perfect and we don't want to make mistakes, because when we mess up on something, it isn't viewed of, oh man, Irma messed up on that deposition or that motion didn't go well. It then becomes, oh, see, you know, Latinos just can't do that well. When I worked at a law firm, I had a wonderful mentor, and one day he was a senior named partner, and we were chatting about the lack of African Americans, Latinos in the law firm. And he said to me, well, we've had some African American lawyers, but they didn't work out. And I said, how many white lawyers haven't worked out here? And he said, a lot. I said, yeah, but that's not memorable to you, right? But you do remember. And that's the way prejudice and discrimination work, that we make assumptions about other people that are false. And I think that women also face that fear, white women and women of all backgrounds, that our failures are attributable more broadly. And that is one of the privileges of being a white man, that your failures aren't distributed to everyone in your community. I got to tell you, every time there's a mass shooting or something horrible, I pray, please, let this be a white man who did this, so that we don't get blamed for this horrible atrocity. So I think that that's one of the biggest challenges. It's not the work, it's the expectations that you're likely to fail and not succeed somewhere. I hate that. And part of what I do when I mentor students is work around the psychology of, look where you are already. You've already succeeded. Look at all you've already accomplished. What makes you think you can't go the next step? Of course you can.
No, thank you to speaking to that, especially the intersection with your gender identity.
Mm-hmm. Oops, you're not supposed to use that word anymore. Intersectionality is banned.
I'm gonna risk it in this room. You spent your career advocating for marginalized communities, whether through the legal profession or through your creative activism. What case or project are you most proud of?
Oh, wow. I'm so proud of so many cases. When I was still a quite young lawyer, I think I was out in my third year, and I was working at MALDEF, we litigated Plyler versus Doe, which went to the United States Supreme Court and established that undocumented children had the right to a free public education. And so I didn't argue it. I got to go watch my colleague, Peter Roos, argue the case. And that was always, it's always exciting to see the culmination of a case. And seeing that we were able to offer so many children the opportunity to get a free public education as a result of that case, I fear that if that were to go to the Supreme Court today, we would get a different outcome. Even then, the decision was 5-4. In more recent past, when I was at Equal Rights Advocates, and ERA has been around 50 years, and it was started by 4 women law graduates of Berkeley Law, which was then called Bolt Hall, but it was renamed Berkeley Law because Mr. Bolt was a big racist. But they might insist that it get renamed after him again. I don't know, with what's going on around the country. But Equal Rights Advocates, when it got started, women couldn't get credit under their own name. You'd have to get it under your husband or fathers or brothers. The joke around the office was that there was one dress, so that if you had to go to court, you could borrow the dress that was hanging in the closet. And some judges wouldn't let women wear pants in court. I mean, all sorts of things that have changed. But at ERA, we advocated for the rights of women. We were involved in pregnancy discrimination cases. And when I was there, the 2 most significant cases that I worked on, one was we sued an Indian casino in California where women employees were being sexually harassed. Some had even been raped. And it was a really tough case because of sovereign immunity, right? You can't sue an Indian tribe, but really the casino was run by a Las Vegas corporation. So I had 2 women colleagues. I didn't even know them that well, but they were prominent attorneys in San Francisco, and they had made a lot of money doing toxic tort cases. And we needed help because we had this small organization, and we had huge law firms representing the casino company and the tribe. And on Fridays, we would get served motions this high every Friday. At the time the case was settled, there were 20-some motions pending around discovery. And so I called these 2 women that I knew, Denise and Simona, and I said, we can't find co-counsel, and we really need help. And I know this isn't the work you do, but can you consider co-counseling with us? The first thing they did is they each wrote us a $25,000 check. And they said, you need more money to litigate this case, and we're going to help you. We know how to get at corporations. And I tell that story because I want people to be aware that some of you will go out there and will make a lot of money. And if that's your goal, that's great. Put it to good use. A lot of people who want to do public interest law are not going to find those jobs, or for whatever life circumstances you end up at a career that's very lucrative financially. Good on you, but make sure that some of that money goes back to help community. So we ended up winning that case through a settlement, and the Indian tribe agreed to establish their own internal system that provided women employees all the rights they had under federal law. And then the other case was it was against the Walmart Corporation. And we represented a class of women who were paid less than men and who did not have as many promotional opportunities because they had what we called the pat on the shoulder, where your supervisor would say, hey, I think you'd be good in the management training program. And so mostly they would pick guys who looked like them. And so a lot of women would say, we train these guys and we're never considered for promotions. So we ended up getting that class certified, and it was the largest class action ever certified in a sex discrimination case, but we lost at the Supreme Court. That was a second chance. I also didn't argue that I got to go watch my colleague argue in the Supreme Court. And while we lost, we also made a lot of changes within the corporation, because the week before we had the class certification hearing, Walmart announced a big pay and promotion initiative where they raised the pay of a lot of women who had been paid less than men. And also they created a system for applying for promotions that didn't exist before. And so sometimes I tell people, even when you lose the case, you can make a tremendous impact. And I had a friend who was a partner at a big law firm, and she said, the Walmart case even had my law firm looking at disparities between what women and men in the law firm were being paid. So it had ripple effects throughout the industry. So those are 3 cases that I worked on, but there are some cases where you just help an individual accomplish something or get something they were entitled to, and that's very rewarding. And I love to encourage people to do pro bono work, especially if you work with a law firm. Engage your law firm, get them to sponsor you, to give you credit for the hours that you work, because that's where the resources are. And you can make a tremendous difference in the lives of people.
Sort of following up on that, how is it like having seen the landscape of civil rights change, going from a time when the Supreme Court would recognize the rights of undocumented children to a free public education, to a space where now potentially birthright citizenship is up for question?
It's really frightening. When I was thinking about what's different now, I don't know that any of our laws matter if in fact we have a dictatorship and we have a person and his administration deciding which rights should be recognized. So I do think all of us have to really be fighting for the rule of law and respect for the 3 branches of government, because they were created to be co-equal branches, and that's not what we're seeing. And I fear that the only way we're going to see change is to actually be out in the streets and have massive demonstrations that brought civil rights legislation to the foreground. It was the massive demonstrations and people seeing the reality for the lives of African Americans and the way that they were treated as they were demanding equality, which the Constitution guarantees us. And the same thing with the Vietnam War. The tide did turn. So I am confident that in the end, we will turn things around and we will have a democracy that prevails. But I do think it's very frightening, and that all of us should be aware of what goes on. I don't take in too much news these days. It's too depressing. I do get my fair share, because every day there's a barrage of assaults on our basic rights. I'm very offended by the attacks on the trans community and the LGBT community. And if we allow them to pick off the smallest groups that are most vilified, it doesn't stop there. It keeps growing and growing and growing. I've told people a lot of Latinos voted for Donald Trump. And it's like, well, yeah, but when he's talking about deporting people, he's not talking about us, right? He's talking about the bad people. But people don't see good and bad sometimes. They just see the color of your skin or that you have an accent. And there you are, wrapped up on an ICE van being deported.
What advice would you give to young activists and lawyers who want to make a difference in civil rights today?
I think you need to surround yourselves with kindred spirits. And I think that it's super important to have a network of friends. I made such great friends here at Notre Dame. And there they are. Marta, Vicky, Pat Dunn. Yeah, there were only 5 Chicanos in my class. There were 2 guys. One of them has already passed. The other one is a judge in Las Vegas. Marta is a federal judge in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Vicky runs an organization called VARN that mobilizes resources to provide legal services. And Pat Dunn, who's Hispanic adjacent and was a dear friend, was in our class too. And she worked most of her career at this Commission on Civil Rights and then at the Board of Immigration Appeals. Surround yourselves with people who share your values, who lift you up, and who see the possibilities in the work. And yeah, some days it is discouraging, but don't lose faith, because as Dr. King says, the arc of the universe bends towards justice, that we do see periods of time when things are very repressive, but you can't stay silent, and you can't expect that if you keep your head down, it's going to go past you and it's not going to affect you. It affects me that there's so much anti-gay, anti-trans, even though I am not of that identity. I know people, I love people who are. And so I need to stick up for them just the way I stick up for my African American brothers and sisters, my Asian brothers and sisters, Native Americans. Anytime you see an injustice, it should matter to you, because it diminishes all of us when anyone is mistreated.
And this will be my last question before we open it up to questions from the audience. But I want to speak a little bit about your play. What was the most challenging part of writing and then performing? Why would I mispronounce my own name?
Okay. The most challenging part is that when I write my first drafts of anything, it's like a legal brief. It is so dense. My director will say, oh, too many words, too many words. People don't care about all those words. Take them out. You just need dialogue, people interacting with each other. Yeah, but I've got to tell people about, they don't understand the context. I need to explain what the law says. No, you don't. Take it out. And so then I think, I don't like you anymore. I'm going to get another director. And then I go home and I tell my husband, I just cannot believe that and of course they always say, I have two directors. They always say, it's your play. We're just telling you that the audience will fall asleep. And so that's the hardest part, in figuring out what to leave in and what to say. And I have a tendency to want to preach. I mean, I want people to know why these things are bad. And my directors say, give people some credit. Just tell the story and they'll draw the conclusion, right? Tell the story. So like the story about my fellow classmate, who tells me, you're a credit to your people, right? Well, what does that mean? That he has elevated me above my people because he thinks my people can't do as well as I did. So hurrah for you. And this is a way in which they play us off each other. And there's some people who get a lot of joy out of that. It's like, well, I'm different, right? I've done a bunch of things, and people ask me, well, why is it that you succeeded and you got a law degree and you've done this and that, and most of the people that you grew up from your community are still living in Alice, Texas, and some went to college, became teachers, others didn't. And it's like, part of it was luck, part of it was timing, but do not doubt that all those people who are part of the community I come from, they're as smart as anyone you ever imagined. They just didn't have a chance. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that a lot of people who grew up with privilege, the road is paved, greased for you to succeed. And we had a lot of those people here at Notre Dame, where there are third generation alumni. They object vehemently to affirmative action, but it's okay to have, alumni privilege, or I forget what it's. Legacy privilege. And when I perform at different colleges, I was at Princeton last year, and it is so wealthy. And you go around and you look at a campus and you have all this fine art, beautiful sculptures. And then I've performed at some community colleges in low-income communities, and they're very pedestrian, functional buildings. And I think, how can you know? How can you know about the big world? And the play that I'm writing now is called Class Migrant, and it's about moving, socioeconomic mobility, and the joys and pain that accompany it. When I was here at Notre Dame, one day a professor referenced Winnie the Pooh. He was describing characters in a dispute, and he said, well, it's like the people in Winnie the Pooh are the characters in Winnie the Pooh. When I left the classroom, I said to a friend of mine, who's Winnie the Pooh? I didn't know. Does that mean that I wasn't as smart as my classmates? No, it just meant that I didn't have that exposure in my family. And I think, do they know about the cucuy? Do they know about mal de ojo and all these home remedies? No, but we measure certain things, and that goes to the who has merit, who's really qualified, right? I had the lowest SAT score of my entering class. How do I know that? Do you remember that they posted the LSA, not with our names on it, but the range of scores of the class that entered? My classmates are going, no. Oh, I don't think I mentioned when I was performing, maybe I did, but there was a rumor that went around that minority students were given a special code word to write into our blue books so that professors would know they had to pass us. Yeah, a white friend told me, and I went like, wow. Yeah, nobody told me what the code word was. And I still got through, right? So yeah, don't lose faith, don't lose hope. Stick up for yourselves. You have to stick up for yourselves, and that is your job as an advocate. I was working on a case, and I'll finish with this. I was working with a case, and we were representing lap dancers. We ended up not taking the case, but we were representing lap dancers who worked at strip clubs in San Francisco, and they were reporting that the owners of the club had put up private booths, and they were getting assaulted. I mean, they were also getting propositioned, and if they wanted, they could exchange sex for money. But some of the women who worked there said, we're feeling unsafe. So we were talking about that in a staff meeting among the lawyers, and one of the women was going to be deposed. And I said to Rose, the lawyer, okay, have you prepared her? And she said, well, I think so. I said, did you ask her if she's ever prostituted herself? And she said, oh, I can't ask her. That's very embarrassing. I said, well, you can be sure that opposing counsel is going to ask that. And it's like, oh, why would I have to do that? Why? It's part of your job. You have to speak up. You have to think of all the possibilities. I always felt that what helped me succeed, I thought of myself as the best prepared person for anything I did. And I just worked so hard. And a friend of mine who is a producer of shows said to me one day, you are the hardest working person I've ever worked with. He said, actually, there's two of you that I know. He said, I've worked with Kamau Bell. Do you guys know who Kamau Bell? He's got a TV series, and he's making millions and millions of dollars. And I said, yeah, well, I'm no Kamau Bell, right? But there's no substitute for really hard work. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have a life, right? You have to have your priorities. You need to have friends. You have to stay true to your, family obligations. But yeah, hard work, and surround yourselves with people who share your values and who uplift you and want you to succeed at whatever you do. Okay, questions. I didn't have time for questions. Oops. Comments.
So if you have a question, I'll come to you with a microphone.
Thank you so much. Ms. Irma, thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how absolutely refreshing it is to just see you sitting here and hear your thoughts. And I'm a crier, so I'm not going to get emotional, but we're so grateful to have you here and to hear your experiences. It really is it means a lot. I think my question is how, for those of us who are interested in public service work and who know that that's why we came to law school and what we want, but are very discouraged by just the current state Is there anything in your history or just your career that you would say really helped you get through the really tough moments where maybe we weren't tending towards justice and things are just going downhill and we're a little scared?
It's what I already mentioned about surrounding yourselves with people who share your values and who believe what is possible, even if it doesn't seem possible right now. Yesterday on the way to the airport, I got into a very deep conversation with a Lyft driver, and it was just a great conversation. We're talking about possibilities, and he said, even before you make a sandwich for lunch, you have to imagine that sandwich. And I thought to myself, what a great way to think about the world, right? You have to imagine that what you believe is just and true is gonna happen. It just isn't here yet. And so hold on to that vision and dream as you do the work, knowing that you're gonna have setbacks. And it is really disappointing to lose a case. And it's disappointing to see rights being stripped away. But do not give in to despair. I mean, we can all have moments of despair and disillusionment, but keep fighting and surround yourselves with people who believe in what you're striving to achieve and make possible for our country.
Hi again. Thank you so much. My name is Aide Barajas. I'm also from Texas, so it's really nice to see that.
Right on to all the Tejanos in the house.
My question is more so about just like JD life right now, like existing right now. I think it's been extremely hard so far this year. It's okay.
You know what? It's okay to be emotional, and it's okay to cry too, because we live with a lot of pain. I also recommend therapy. when you need it.
Bi-weekly.
Because, because there's a lot of heartache that we see.
And we see Mahmoud Khalil going through all that stuff. Colombia expelled / suspended 22 students for speaking up against the genocide. And we have a lot of that issue going on right now in our own campus, not being able to speak up, going to the dean, him being like, well, you have free speech, like be the change you want to see. But then we have everything to lose for speaking up. So my question is just like, how do you balance wanting to speak up and saying all this stuff, but then knowing that you have everything to lose for speaking up? Like, how do you keep your mouth shut? How do you know when to do that? And when to speak up against your professors who I guess they say it's that they won't know who they're grading, but at the end of the day, there's a moment in time in which they can just bump your grade down a little bit or bump it up a little bit. So just little things like that.
Yeah.
How do you exist before even graduating, but also wanting to speak up for the people that you could not be here today without them?
Yeah. No, I hear your pain. The thing about that rumor that we got a special code word to write into our exams, we, the minority students, kept thinking, God, I hope it really is anonymous grading and that they don't know who we are, right? Is there something in my grammar and what I wrote that might suggest that I'm Black or Latina? It is a calculated risk that you take, and it's okay to not speak up sometimes when you have so much to lose and you want to make it to the next place. I tell my friends who are my age, many of whom are activists and are now retired, that we're the ones that need to be out in the front lines because we have less to lose, right? I've already had a career. I lead a protest in front of my house every Monday night. And I did that for 2 years after George Floyd was killed. And I send a notice to my neighbors saying, hey, I'm starting up last week because I think what's going on in our government is outrageous. So 10 people showed up. And I expect that more will. You have to ask yourself, can I risk this right now? So even though I say yes, speak up, there are times when it's too costly for what you want to do next that will make you an advocate your whole lifetime, right? If you lose the ability to have a career, period, in law, you're not going to be an advocate. But it is a hard and painful thing to say, well, but I should be out there. When you see the photos of what's going on in Gaza, you just say, what inhumanity. How can I live my life having a nice meal in this warm, comfortable place when there are children who don't even have clean water or a roof over their heads and bombs are killing their relatives? It's very painful. I wish I had a magic wand and that I could take the pain away of living in a world that's full of pain. I love that Buddhists acknowledge that pain is part of everyday life. And so seeking to be our best selves and making life easy for those around us, or people you don't know, just a smile. How do I make the world a better place right now is, I think, also helpful. So be grounded in that you're already doing things that matter.
Any last questions?
Can I ask if my classmates have any words of wisdom to share with law students about starting out in your careers? Don't be shy.
To the student who just spoke, I feel like, we all have to bide our time. But in the interim, you are being given a wonderful education, and the law is a tool. And you learn all you can how to use it to advance what you believe in. And justice takes time, and justice is being denied and taken away from us. But you've got the tools, and it's the tools that have, over time, made the advances. So I would say that to that. The other thing is, for Irma, for those who are interested in learning more about your play, where can they see it and access it? Because believe me, there's a lot more insights, and it's very entertaining. So you should try to catch it.
So you can find me at irmaherrera.com. And you can send me an email. I also mentor a lot of students. That's another part that has been very joyous about my career. When people say, what are you most proud of your time at Equal Rights Advocates in particular? And it was all the young women, and mostly women. We had a few men who worked in our organization who have gone on to do amazing things. I got an email this morning from one of the lawyers who started out her career there, asking if I would go to her induction ceremony. She was just named a Superior Court judge by the governor, and that's in a couple of weeks. Another young woman I worked with is on the California Supreme Court, Kelly Evans, the first Black lesbian woman on the California Supreme Court. And when I was at MALDEF, one of my law clerks was Javier Becerra, who went on to become the Secretary of Health and, is it called Health and Human Services? And so I always make it a point to mentor young people. Some of them haven't even started law school. I always speak at Centro Legal de la Raza, has a legal pipeline program. And I always give people my phone number and my email, irmadherrera@gmail.com. You should feel comfortable calling me and saying, here's what I'm interested in doing. You have any ideas? I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. If you're ever there, give me a holler. I'd love to get together with you. But I love encouraging people to be their best selves and to figure out what is it that gives your life purpose and joy. And yes, my play right now isn't playing anywhere. I'm focused on writing a new play, and also I need to make some major revisions to my existing play given what's going on in the world of politics. However, I feel like I could change it every day, right? And so I'm just letting that simmer. But I do expect to be performing both those plays sometime later this year. And so you can find me on all the social media. I even have, what is it called, a link tree? I have an assistant who handles my social media, so yes, Pat. And Yes, I do have, and I have a YouTube channel. I have excerpts of my play. I also do, during COVID, I started what I call my stairwell teatro, where I tell stories from the stairwell in my house. A lot of them are political, like the very last piece I did. I put out a blog probably once a month, was about the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico. And what does that say? What is that really about? It's about power and humiliation. And the making of English the official language in the United States is also about sending a message to society at large about what we value and what we don't value. And so I was at the gym the other day in the sauna, and there were 3 men speaking Spanish to each other. And I thought to myself, I hope somebody doesn't call ICE on them, right? Because there have been instances where people overhear some folks speaking Spanish and they call ICE because they assume if you speak Spanish, you must be undocumented. And all of those are power plays to break us and to humiliate us, and we will not be broken. We have survived so much, like the African American community will say, they survived being taken from their land, the Middle Passage, centuries of enslavement. We will not be broken. Aquí estamos y no nos vamos. Pat, and thank you, Pat, Vicky, and Martha. What would you like to share?
Well, for this group, I'd say stay connected with her. She leads you in very interesting directions, and she's very, very supportive. And the other thing is, keep hooked up with women lawyers. For us, when we first came to Notre Dame, we were the first class for Title IX, pushing for Title IX. It was a big deal that they admitted 30% of our class was
22%.
Well, we graduated 22%. People dropped out, but they admitted 30% women at the time, and so 30% at that time was 50 women. 50. Before us, there were like 10 women in the class. 10 women in the whole school, and those women were people like had Fulbright scholars, were just so outrageously beyond everybody else in their credentials and things. We were like the first class that was kind of normal,
regular people.
students. And so that's, for my career, that's been very, very important, is keeping connected with women lawyers. When I left Notre Dame, I went and moved to Nevada. And I was the first women law clerk for one of the state court judges. So my career has been pretty much on the flow of the edge of the women becoming important in the practice of law. And so it's like a miracle to be here today to see all these women, potential women lawyers, and that how it's changed. So if there's anything that we can offer is that, change is available and will happen. The other thing that I've learned is I do a lot of God's work, which men say you don't get paid for. I was working with the university president at the University of Nevada on a Title IX project, and there were 3 women lawyers. At that time, the University of Nevada had the lowest rating for Title IX, the lowest rating for participation for women athletics. So 3 of us from the women lawyers group met with him. We stuffed our briefcases with papers and stuff, and we made an appointment with the university president, and we marched into his office and started demanding that they start increasing the number of sports available to the women students, because you know what the sports bring from this school, this sports bring scholarships, they bring education, and women were really missing out on that in the whole state of Nevada. So we were really banging on the door, and he later after we finished our project with him, came up and said, that we really scared him. It was really weird because we were scared. Here we were walking into the university president's office making these demands that we had no idea. Nevada was really a football school, just like this place. And, football reigned. And so we thought we had little impact. We had a huge impact. Over a period of a decade, we ended up increasing the amount of participation in women's athletics at the whole University of Nevada system by about 100. We ended up with 6 new women's sports, 3 on each of the campuses, and it increased the scholarships to over 100.
Wow.
And in the state of Nevada, in the state of Nevada, it's really important because the legislature pays money for increasing this, and it's in the budget. So it gets put on as a line item in the budget. And once you get put on a line item in the budget, it doesn't go away very easily. And so it was a situation where the 3 of us talk about it a lot. But it's a situation where, as Margaret Mead said, a small group of people can make a huge impact. So you need to remember that.
Yeah, word. Thank you, Vicky. Marta, what have you got to say?
Hi, everybody. First of all, we could talk all day. There's just so many things that I know we would love to share with you. But when we were here, I have to tell you, it was really hard. It was for a lot of reasons. Like some of us had never met a lawyer before and weren't really clear what they do, but knew we wanted to be here. And then finances, are constantly, front and center. How am I going to pay for this? I was in property law when I got my first year, and I got a letter about my being evicted because I was late because my school loans hadn't come through, so I had no way of paying my rent. All of those things I remember kind of sadly, and now being here and seeing so many of you, I am so encouraged. I remember sitting in criminal law and every name had a Hispanic surname. It was always U.S. versus Vasquez, U.S. versus Garcia. It was
Escobedo versus Illinois.
And it was just, I remember feeling so embarrassed. Is that what people think of me? Is that what people think of us? Is that we're nothing but criminals? It was just god awful. And then, to my shock, I ended up being a public defender right out of law school. Last thing I thought I would be doing, talking to some guy about how much he penetrated, it was a tough adjustment. I will say that this law school really prepared me well for many things that were to happen in my life that I couldn't have even anticipated because my father was an undocumented worker who was deported many times. And, life just doesn't prepare us because, we all have a certain, I shouldn't say all, but many of us have a certain unique background that makes standardized testing tough. We don't eat pizza and beer. The types of analysis that are part of standardized testing, many times it's not part of our life. So we don't understand the concepts. I ended up having 4 children, and that was another tough thing, that a lot of women face, is being able to get pregnant, have our children, and also demonstrate to our partners that we're committed advocates, and that we can do the work. hired almost all women law clerks because we all have to have our babies at this certain point, right? The whole biological clock thing that keeps ticking. And that's been, for me, a wonderful experience, is being able to work with so many women. I was the first woman appointed to the federal bench in New Mexico. And I remember my youngest was just 3. And I remember having to travel 4 hours and staying there for 3 months in the southern part of our state to handle immigration cases and violent crime. And it was very difficult to leave my kids. All of a sudden, you know, their dad is taking them to doctor appointments and stuff, but it's a tough thing. And you couldn't very well say, can you cover for me? I have a Christmas pageant, because then they'll say, well, we're not gonna get any more women then if you guys can't do your own caseload. So there are incredible challenges and unbelievable highs. It's worth the challenges, very much so. It's worth how hard it was to be here, very much so. Being here, I think, prepared me for a lot of the sexual harassment issues that came afterwards. Because when we were here, there were very few of us. I was an undergraduate here the year that Notre Dame went co-ed, and that was tough, being around nothing but men in all of your classes. Irma does roll call, and every woman would try to go here, so nobody would turn around and look at you as being the only girl in the class. It's been an incredible ride doing immigration cases when my father was deported. I would tell all of these defendants in Spanish, and it was translated for the record, how we imprison people now. When my dad kept coming to the United States illegally, we as a nation used to shave heads because they'd have to at least wait until their hair grew back before they came in, because nobody ever wore shaved heads like we do now. But that was the only consequence. You were dropped off at the border. My dad said ICE, sometime it wasn't called ICE, it was called INS then. Sometimes we'd give him breakfast at the border. Boy, how things have changed. Anyway, I'm very excited for you. A law degree from this school opens many doors, prepares you well for the bar, and you're all gonna do incredible things. Thank you for inviting us.
You see how lucky I've been to have these friends?
Irma,
Yeah.
one thing. We've talked a lot about this going to people that are your people. The one thing I don't know that exists, because I'm certainly not a member, but you could start a Notre Dame Women's Lawyer Association, because now there are? Really? Well, that's great, because, I've not gotten any information about it, but that would be helpful to just tap the association that
The
you
women
have.
alumni.
Yeah,
because we
exactly.
had a women's law caucus.
No,
When we
yeah,
were
but
in- yeah.
I'm just talking about lawyers, women
Yeah.
lawyers,
Yeah.
so.
Work your networks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting us. It's
Thank
lovely.
you.
And I'm sorry if we went on too long.
Well, someone took my speech, so I'm just going to wing it. No worries. So I just wanted to thank you all so much for coming to our fireside chat, and I wanted to extend a heartfelt thank you to Irma Herrera for sharing your time, your story, and your powerful performance with us today. Your journey from a civil rights attorney to a journalist to a playwright reminds us of the many ways we can use our voices to create change. So thank you so much for inspiring us and for doing the important work that you continue to do. And thank you to our moderator, Madeline, for leading such a thoughtful discussion with us today. And of course, a huge thank you to our sponsors, our HALSA board, and the faculty and staff who have helped us all put this together. Finally, to all of our alumni, students, and friends of Notre Dame, thank you for being here and engaging in these conversations and continuing to uplift and strengthen this community. However, this is just the beginning of our weekend together, and we look forward to seeing everyone here tonight for the Graciela Olivares Award Ceremony honoring Judge Moreno at 5:45 in the Morrison private dining rooms. It promises to be another inspiring event, and we cannot wait to continue our celebration with you all there. Thank you so much for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.